Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider. Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk when he was exposed to gamma rays. But the origin story for your superpower is simpler than that. You were born with it. When you were a baby, you were tiny and vulnerable. You couldn't feed, clothe, or bathe yourself. On your own, you wouldn't have survived long. But you had a superpower. Influence. You used your superpower to persuade your caretakers to look after you. And at first, your tools of influence were rudimentary. Basically, you cried a lot. But it got the job done. Then, as a toddler, you honed your powers of influence. Bargaining, charming, blackmailing, negotiating. You tried it all. You didn't always get what you wanted. But often enough, you did. As you grew up, however, you may have lost touch with your superpower. The thing is, we're taught that it's more important to be nice and to share than to get what we want. We're not taught that we can still be nice and share, while at the same time using our influence to manifest great outcomes for ourselves and for others. But maybe we can have it all. Influence, wielded correctly, is transformative. It creates change, it births movements, touches hearts, and changes minds. So, what will you do with yours? Influencing what people think begins with understanding how people think. And there's a good chance you're thinking about thinking all wrong. Here's a bit of cognitive science to set the record straight. There are two basic modes of thought processing. Researchers have labeled these modes System 1 and System 2. But because that's not very catchy, we're going to call them something else. We'll call System 1 the gator brain. Alligators can weigh up to 999 pounds. They're big guys. But the average gator's brain is the size of half a tablespoon. And because their tiny little brains need to power their big, hungry bodies, alligators are all about conserving mental energy. To perform everyday tasks, they rely on instinct and learned reflex rather than complex cognition. Essentially, whether they're sunbaking or swimming, alligators spend the majority of their time on autopilot. Their cognitive powers only really kick in when they spot a threat or an opportunity. Don't worry, your brain is definitely bigger than half a tablespoon. But it has more in common with an alligator's brain than you might think. To conserve your mental energy, your brain spends a lot of time in gator mode. Whenever you're doing something habitual to you, like chopping onions or swimming laps or reading a novel, you're using instinct and reflex to power through the task. You're using your gator brain. We'll call System 2 your judge brain. In judge mode, your brain performs more complex cognitive feats, like analyzing, comparing, questioning, and concentrating. High-level tasks and tasks that you're not yet proficient in will demand your judge brain take over. But here's the catch. Most people think that the judge performs the bulk of the cognitive workload. In reality, we operate far more frequently in gator mode. Whether we like it or not, gator brain is actually our default setting cognitively speaking. In fact, nothing even gets sent to your judge brain without your gator brain's approval. When we come to someone with a proposal, a pitch, or a request, we often try to appeal to the judge. But we might see better results if we address the gator instead. Remember, every cognitive input, without exception, has to go through the gator. And the gator is efficient. Less politely, your gator brain is seriously lazy. One corporation turned that laziness to its own advantage with stunning results. So in 2015, Pizza Hut was the world's largest pizza delivery company. Its rival, Domino's, naturally wanted the top spot. So, Domino's introduced the Anywhere campaign. The goal was to make it easier than ever to order a pizza. And the company figured they already had the customer's payment information and address. So what they come up with was that you could just text or tweet an emoticon of a pizza to Domino's and, well, there is no and. That was it. Send a pizza emoji and get your usual order delivered to your door. Sales went up 10% in that quarter alone, and just 3 years later, Domino's knocked Pizza Hut off its perch and became the biggest pizza delivery company in the world. So when you make a proposal graspable, or a call to action simple, a decision easy to make, you've already increased your chances of success because you're appealing directly to the gator. So before you try and overcomplicate things, see if you can find your pizza emoji equivalent. Sometimes the easiest way to get what you want is just to ask. One MBA student, Jia Zhang, perfectly demonstrated this. He once walked into a Krispy Kreme in Austin, Texas, and ordered donuts in the shape of the Olympic rings. Now, Krispy Kreme doesn't actually offer Olympic donuts on their menu, and Jia said he would only wait 50 minutes for his server, Jackie, to create this bespoke treat. Jackie obliged. What's more, she told Jia his order was on the house. So what high-level influencing tactic did Jia use to pull this off? Well, he asked. Influencing someone to deliver what you want can be as simple and as effective as asking for it outright. Yet, this is a tactic most of us are hesitant to try. And why? Because while our request might be met with a yes, it's possible it will be met with a no. We're afraid of hearing no. No feels like a personal rejection. And rejection is scary. In fact, fear of rejection is what prompted Jia to walk into the Krispy Kreme in the first place. After graduating from an MBA program, Jia had big dreams of becoming an entrepreneur. But his first pitch to a venture capitalist was met with a no thanks. Jia felt so deflated he almost gave up on his dream for good. He didn't want to hear another no. But then, he realized his fear of rejection was holding him back. And so he decided to do something about it. The end result was 100 days of rejection therapy. Every day, for 100 days, Jia approached someone with a request so outlandish he was sure their answer would be no. He figured the more rejections he accrued, the less scary rejection would seem. His requests to make an announcement over Costco's intercom or become a live model in an Abercrombie & Fitch store were both rejected. But some of Jia's requests were met with a yes. Jackie at Krispy Kreme made him that bespoke donut order. A local family let him play soccer in their yard. And his neighborhood Starbucks allowed him to act as a store greeter, a position that doesn't actually exist in Starbucks stores. Deploying your influence effectively means getting comfortable with hearing the word no. You could try a course of radical rejection therapy like Jia. You can also practice saying no yourself. Try it for 24 hours. Decline every request that doesn't appeal to you. Don't offer a qualified yes or try to find an alternate solution. Respond with a firm but polite no. Attending a conference when you're already overstretched? No. Doing the dishes? Not tonight. As you reject others, pay close attention to how you're feeling. When you say no to something, are you rejecting the person who approached you? Does your no express irritation or disgust at the request? Are you saying no irrevocably and permanently? Of course not. No isn't a dirty word, whether you're saying it or hearing it. Once you're comfortable with saying and hearing the word no, you'll become more comfortable with making requests. And you might hear yes more often than you think. Out of his 100 days of rejection therapy, Jia ultimately garnered 51 yeses in response to his outlandish requests. Not a bad result. But you might be able to achieve even better odds by learning how to effectively pose your requests. So next, we'll pitch in the right way at the right time. Whether you're asking for a promotion, offering advice, or trying out a new pitch to customers, timing is everything. Case in point, this airfare promotion wouldn't have been so successful if it were launched on a sunny day. So, let me explain. The internet is saturated with digital tourism campaigns. a Hong Kong-based Filipino airline agency showed just how effective quick thinking and clever timing can be with a guerrilla marketing campaign that took things offline. During one of the wettest days in Hong Kong's monsoon season, the team took advantage of a break in the rain to take to the streets. They stenciled the sidewalks with a waterproof spray that remained invisible on a dry surface, so it only appeared when it rained. As the next downpour dampened the sidewalks, their message was revealed in bright yellow letters. It read, "It's sunny in the Philippines," and an accompanying QR code sent users to the airline's website. On a nice day, this message might not have had much impact. But in the middle of one of the most miserable days of the year, flight sales through the agency's website increased by a phenomenal 37%. So, the lesson here is make your pitch when your audience is primed to be receptive. Pitching a travel deal? Do it when your audience is desperate to get away. Pitching your boss for a raise? Try asking her when you've just wrapped a successful project, and not when she's cramming in lunch between meetings. Here are a few more strategies to help you pitch successfully. To begin with, weed out any diminishing language from your proposal. Phrases like, "I was just wondering," or "would it be possible to," weaken the impact of your pitch. The same goes for qualifying phrases like kind of, it seems, and more or less. And while you're at it, within reason, avoid the pronoun I. Referring constantly to yourself draws your listeners away from the content of your pitch and onto you personally. For example, a phrase like, "I might be wrong, but," this puts a spotlight on your fallibility. On the other hand, a phrase like, "Is it possible that," keeps focus on the parameters of your pitch. Next up, go big with your first ask. Do you need $20,000 of seed capital to start a new venture? Try asking for $30,000. You might get it. Also, your listener is much more likely to say yes to your request for $20,000 if you've already asked for $30,000. This tactic plays with what we'll call relative size. $20,000 seems like a whole lot of money, but compared with $30,000 or even $40,000, it doesn't seem like such an outlandish amount. This tactic also appeals to your listener's sense of reciprocity. If your first request is rejected, making a smaller second request creates the impression that you've made a concession to your listener. And if they feel you've compromised with them, they'll be primed to reciprocate and compromise with you in return. Finally, for big asks, you can always rely on the magic question. What would it take? Let's say, for example, you want to go part-time. Your boss isn't sure. If you were to ask, "Why can't I go part-time?" you'd likely be met with a list of deterrents. But when you ask, "What would it take for me to go part-time?" you open up a space for your boss to think proactively about your request. Maybe you need to streamline certain processes or train up a more junior team member, or commit to accomplishing a set number of tasks in a week. What would it take is an invitation to collaborate on a problem and find creative solutions. It's the kind of question that facilitates positive outcomes for everyone involved. Influencing at its best. Here's an exercise for you. Think of 3 things that are blue. Got 'em? Okay. Now, think of 3 things that, just like milk, snow, and marshmallows, are white. I don't know which blue things you thought of, but I have a feeling you thought about milk, snow, and marshmallows when I asked you to think of 3 white things. This is the concept of framing. When I framed my request with concrete examples, I influenced your response. Let's look at some real-world examples of framing that had a big impact. A few years after he founded Apple in his garage, Steve Jobs was searching for a CEO. In Jobs' mind, only one person fit the bill: John Sculley. The problem was, Sculley was already the CEO of PepsiCo, one of America's most successful companies. For Sculley, Jobs' proposal was a non-starter. Why would he leave one of the most prestigious posts in corporate America to work for some scrappy, unproven startup. Scully declined Jobs' offer multiple times, but Jobs persisted. Finally, Jobs hit on the right frame for his request. According to Scully, he said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" For Scully, that was enough. Up to that point, he'd been concerned with success and stability. PepsiCo offered that. But Jobs reframed the proposition in a way that made Scully consider the significance of his work. Once Jobs flipped that switch, Scully jumped at the chance to get on board with Apple. If you frame a concept, a proposition, or a sales pitch well, you can also frame the other ways to respond to it. Some people know instinctively how to frame effectively. But if that's not you, don't worry. There are 3 key frames you can use, and I'll walk you through them now. That first example with Jobs and Scully is a monumental frame. A monumental frame tells us that something is monumentally exciting, monumentally important, monumentally urgent. Basically, Jobs inspired Scully to reevaluate his whole career with one simple question, a monumental question. A manageable frame motivates differently. Manageable frames make things feel doable. And when things feel doable, people do them. For many people who live with credit card debt, paying down the balance can feel the opposite of doable. And that's a real deterrent to doing anything more than making the minimum monthly repayment. A study conducted by Australia's Commonwealth Bank tried to make debt feel manageable. A group of credit card users were given statements divided into categories and encouraged to pay off one category at a time. Maybe they couldn't pay off the whole balance in a given month, but they could pay off all their entertainment expenses. Compared to the control group, this group settled their overall debts 12% faster. Finally, there's the mysterious frame. And this one's pretty simple. Our lazy gator brain doesn't always bite when something is framed as important or healthy or practical. But something mysterious, new, and exciting? Now you've got the gator's attention. Framing your pitch as a question that piques curiosity or a mystery that's going to be revealed will certainly get you a few bites. If you've ever found your cursor hovering over a clickbait headline beginning with, "You'll never believe, ... then you'll know how powerfully irresistible the mysterious frame can be. But just be careful not to oversell on mystery or underdeliver on actual substance. Catching attention is one thing, compromising your credibility is another. When in doubt, you can cover all your bases by combining frames. You might have heard of Marie Kondo, for example. Her book on the art of streamlining and decluttering, called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, has sold more than 11 million copies. And its success might be down to that catchy title that combines all 3 frames. Life-changing is monumental, magic is mysterious, and tidying up feels pretty manageable. The same book, titled House Organization Techniques, probably wouldn't have flown off the shelves at the same rate. You see, it's all about the frame. Have you ever heard of Aikido? It's a modern Japanese martial art. The objective is to defend yourself from your opponent by redirecting their flow of movement in a way that also protects them from injury. As you exert your influence on others, you will, sooner or later, meet resistance and objections. You don't need to shut down the minute you're met with resistance. At the same time, you don't need to aggressively counterattack others' objections. Instead, like an Aikido master, you can respect and redirect resistance where you find it to come to a mutually agreeable solution. Here's a good example. Ethan Brown is the CEO of Beyond Meat, and when it comes to deflecting market resistance, he's as skilled as an Aikido master. Brown knew that his product, a plant-based meat substitute, would be a tough sell. Sure, it's great for the environment and for people's health. But Brown had observed how other meat substitutes that sold themselves as the greener, healthier choice were popular among vegetarians and vegans, but provoked a defensive response from meat eaters. Being told that their current diet was unhealthy and irresponsible made meat eaters feel scolded rather than motivated to buy the product. So Brown abandoned that sales angle. He anticipated that many meat eaters would resent giving up the meat they enjoyed. So rather than focusing on abstinence in a way that, for example, the Meatless Mondays campaign does, Brown framed his product with the word beyond, suggesting an enhanced product. Brown anticipated another big objection: the taste. By partnering with fast food franchises, Brown created meatless versions of typical treats like pizzas and subs, convincing the public that plant-based meat substitutes would be as tasty and as indulgent as regular meat. In 2019, Beyond Meat sales reached $98.5 million. Like Brown, you can anticipate, deflect, and reframe objections. Try these simple tricks. If a listener meets your proposal with resistance, don't try and downplay their feelings. Acknowledge their resistance, and if possible, articulate it. Try it the next time you sense resistance with a simple sentence like, "You might think I'm too young to step into a managerial role," or, "I understand that we're asking for a lot of money." When you put someone's resistance into words, you disarm them. What's more, you silence the negative voice in their mind, freeing them to focus on your actual proposition. Before you ask something, ask permission to ask. Every day we're bombarded with requests and offers, and sometimes the gator brain kicks in and we respond to every new proposition with an automatic no. So, instead of asking, "Can I have a pay rise?" try asking, "Could we have a conversation about my pay this week?" If they say yes, they've tacitly agreed to considering your request. If they say no, they haven't shut down the possibility of a pay rise, just the possibility of talking about it this week. When you come to someone with a proposition, affirm their freedom of choice. Use a phrase like, "no pressure," or "feel free to say no." Of course, your listener is free to say no to you whether you affirm their choice or not, but a blunt request may make your listener feel coerced and resentful. Emphasizing that you don't want to pressure them into agreeing sets the tone for a resentment-free interaction. You've just listened to our blinks to Influence is Your Superpower by Zoe Chance. Here's the final summary. Truly effective influencers are skilled at reaching their own objectives in a way that uplifts others, conveying their opinions while genuinely listening to competing views, and turning resistance into authentic support for their ideas. This kind of influence is within your reach if you practice the skills and strategies necessary to harness it. And here's one final thing to keep in mind. Everything is negotiable. So where do most negotiations stall? At the conference table? In the lead-up? No and no. Most negotiations stall before they've even started because we don't realize a negotiation is possible. Here's a secret. Everything, more or less, is negotiable. A salary offer is negotiable. The terms of your mortgage are negotiable. The seat you're assigned on an airplane is definitely negotiable. Get in the habit of asking, "Is there room to negotiate here?" And the results might surprise you.